Well, we have now finished the national nominations and will continue with the examination of one mixed site. This nomination will be presented by the two advisory bodies. It is Mexico, the Tehuacan-Cuicatlan Valley, originary habitat of Mesoamerica, draft decision 41-8B.9, and I now invite IUCN and ICOMOS to present the nominations of Tehuacan-Cuicatlan Valley, originary habitat of Mesoamerica, Mexico. But before I give the floor to the Secretariat, Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind that we received a factual error notification concerning the evaluation of this nomination, and this notification is to be found on page 36 of both the English and French version of document INF 8B4. Thank you, Chair.
I thank you, Mr. Balsamo. Now, IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. IUCN's evaluation of Tehuacan-Cuicatlan Valley is on page 89 of the English and page 95 of the French versions of our evaluation report. Next slide, please. The Tehuacan-Cuicatlan Valley, originary habitat of Mesoamerica, is nominated as a mixed site with a serial configuration of 3 component parts. The property is found within Mexico's southernmost arid and semi-arid region and covers an area of some 145,000 hectares with an enveloping buffer zone of nearly 345,000 hectares. The nominated property has a complicated alignment with the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve of the same name, and there is an apparently different alignment of the nominated area with the Biosphere Reserve core zones, although the relationship and reasons for boundary differences are not fully clear. Next slide, please. The nominated property has a complex topography with wide array of microclimates and harbours the main types of vegetation of the Tehuacan-Cuicatlan Valley: xeric shrublands, tropical deciduous forests, oak and pine forests, as well as vegetation types of smaller extent such as palm groves or gallery forests. The nominated property exists within a broader region well recognised for its high biodiversity values. The property reportedly hosts an unusually high number of threatened species, with some 38 listed in threatened categories in the IUCN Red List. It also sits within a region of high endemism. Next slide, please. The property is in the arid and semi-arid zone with the greatest biological diversity in North America. A remarkable 70% of the worldwide flora families are represented in the valley by at least one species, and the area is one of the main centres of diversification of the cacti family, which occurs in exceptional densities of up to 1,800 columnar cacti per hectare, and is a family of plants which is highly threatened worldwide. Next slide, please. Worldwide, the region hosts one of the highest animal biodiversity levels in a dryland, at least with regard to taxa such as amphibians, reptiles and birds. The nominated property sits within one of the 2 most important protected areas in the world for the conservation of 7 amphibian and 3 bird species. And the biodiversity of this region has a long history of sustaining human development, and today 1/3 of the total diversity of the valley, so approximately 1,000 species, are used in some way by local people. Next slide, please. The management framework and legal protection are considered adequate, and interactions with the wider landscape and connectivity needs are being taken into account in ensuring the adequate protection of the reserve. Almost all the nominated property is classed as ejidos, small agrarian communities granted land in the land needed for subsistence. The 3 components of the property were selected considering criteria of representativeness and ecological connectivity, as well as questions of threat, as well as for their legal protection and management. However, the maps provided in the nomination dossier make it difficult to work out exactly how these components are configured, as I've already made clear, and IUCN is not yet clear that all the elements necessary to express the stated outstanding universal value are indeed included in the nominated area, as would be required by paragraph 88 of the operational guidelines. Next slide, please. Whilst in general an effective and well-established management system is in place for the natural values of the property, the degree to which an integrated approach to bringing natural and cultural issues together remains limited. In comparison to other regions in Mexico, current and potential threats are quite low. Until now, there have been low numbers of visitors to the area, in the order of 20,000 per year. There is a nature tourism strategy in place, however, it is not clear how this is influencing site management. The last slide, please. So in summary, IUCN considers the nominated property has a strong potential to meet criterion 10, subject to further reflection on the mixed site approach and confirmation that the key attributes of outstanding universal value are those which are included within the boundaries of the nominated area. At this point, integrity, protection and management requirements are also not fully met, and there's a need for a configuration of revised property that better recognises the interplay between natural and cultural values that is at the heart of the idea of a mixed World Heritage Site. It's for these reasons that IUCN, whilst recognising the potential, recommends this site be deferred, Mr. Chair. And the last slide tells you that the draft decision is on page 13 of the English and French versions, but ICOMOS has comments to make on the cultural aspects of this mixed site nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, IUCN. Now, ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Tehuacan-Cuicatlan Valley shelters high-level forests and low-scrub landscapes, which appear to have been attractive to early semi-settled and later settled communities. Archaeological evidence at 22 sites is said to reveal a process of technical evolution that reflects early plant domestication, agriculture, and then later a salt industry and the emergence of pottery in the region over a period of some several thousands of years. A diversified water management system exploited the resources of the mountains and led to the development of an irrigation-based agriculture, which, it is suggested, became a mainstream of Mesoamerican civilization. The property extends to some 450,000 hectares. The lowlands and gorges and their plentiful water supply are seen as being a major factor in converting, at an early date, communities of nomadic hunter-gatherers to a sedentary lifestyle based on the cultivation of maize, squash and beans. Within the vast area of the property, there are 600 archaeological sites that bear witness to this progress over the course of 12,000 years, although only 22 are described in the nomination dossier. This lack of information on the overall landscape and their acknowledged need for more studies means that, compared to the rich details in the nomination dossier on natural aspects, the material provided on cultural sites is extremely limited, and the work of analysis appears to be at a much earlier stage. The 22 sites fall into three types. First, early sites that reflect the beginnings of agriculture, plant domestication, and the development of human settlements. Secondly, sites associated with beliefs and rituals. And thirdly, sites that demonstrate water management infrastructure. The key archaeological site reflecting plant domestication is the rock shelter of Cueva de Cuicatlan. This was excavated in the 1960s, and the early remains of maize cobs, avocado, and other fruits are the oldest finds of these cultivated plants that were dated to approximately 9,500 to 7,000 BC. The cave also supplied evidence to indicate that much later, between 4,000 and 3,350 BC, horticultural villages appeared, thus providing evidence for early settled agriculture. The sites associated with beliefs and rituals throw lights on the traditions of the first settlers in the region through cave paintings, where cave art displays motifs related to humans and animals, such as the footprint and handprints and human-like figures you see here. During what is called the Classic era, from 100 BCE to 700 AD, settlements expanded and structures related to privileged classes, such as pyramids, appear. What underpinned this expansion and transformation was the development of irrigated agriculture. And the key piece of engineering that facilitated this irrigation was the Puron Dam. This was built in 4 stages and constructed sometime before 750 BC and was in use for a total of around 900 years. As well as the dam, the irrigation system included canals, wells, rock aqueducts, filtration galleries, and water catchment wells. But although details are provided on the larger sites, no clear picture emerges of how widespread across the landscape these features were. The property also reflects much later traces of political, religious and residential features from around 400 BC, reflecting the development of specialized activities such as pottery and salt industry. Further settlements such as the Quito Pec Urban Centre and Cocotlan bring the timelines down to the 16th century. The 22 sites in the valley thus span an enormous time frame and are spread out across a vast area. Although what's been nominated are 3 large areas of landscape, the serial nomination is not put forward as a cultural landscape, but rather as an ensemble of 22 archaeological sites that pinpoint stages in the evolution of the valley. The evidence is thus spread across the landscape with little indication as to the interrelationship between the sites. Although some sites were excavated and recorded in the 1960s, many other sites await more detailed investigation, as acknowledged by the State Party. Thus, the 22 sites we know about are only the tip of the iceberg, as 600 more are known to exist. The idea that an ensemble of a small number of sites can be seen as exceptional within Mesoamerica for their reflection of the particular way societies developed has not been substantiated in the details provided in terms of links in space and time and through comparisons with other sites. And the comparative analysis has not substantiated the evidence for early agriculture to be seen as exceptional, particularly in the light of the recent inscription of similar sites in the Oaxaca Valley nearby. What does begin to emerge, however, is the possibility that the Tehuacan-Cuicatlan Valley could be differentiated primarily through evidence for the emergence of irrigation and the complex water management systems that supported it. ICOMOS considers that if this particular element could be presented in much greater detail and through a landscape approach, it could have the potential to provide the basis for the valley or parts of it to be seen as an outstanding reflection of the emergence of irrigation-based agriculture in Mesoamerica. What would be needed, though, is an overview of what sites are known, how they relate to each other, and detailed surveys and research on the overall irrigation system and how it functioned. At the moment, ICOMOS does not consider that the comparative analysis has justified consideration of this property as it stands, and nor does the nomination justify the criteria, and as the attributes of OUV have not been identified, nor can integrity and authenticity be justified. Overall, the legal protection is appropriate, the state of conservation is fair but vulnerable, and ICOMOS considers that the management system needs much stronger attention to the conservation of cultural sites, and particularly to the conservation and restoration of archaeological sites in the landscape. Finally, with respect to our recommendation, ICOMOS recommends that the examination of the nomination of the Tehuacan-Cuicatlan Valley be deferred in order to allow the State Party, with the advice of ICOMOS and the World Heritage Centre if requested, to consider a revised nomination as a cultural landscape focusing on the development of irrigated agriculture. Secondly, to undertake further surveys, research and documentation of the sites in the valley related to irrigation in the context of an overall assessment of the known sites in order to set the irrigation system into a landscape scale. And thirdly, to augment the comparative analysis of sites with evidence for irrigation within Mesoamerica to justify the complexity of the system compared to others. And we have 3 other recommendations related to management, financial resources, and a visitor management strategy. Thank you.
I thank ICOMOS for your presentation. I now invite the committee members to express their comments, and the floor is open. I give the floor to Cuba.
Gracias, señor presidente. Estamos en presencia de un sitio indudablemente de excepcional valor en términos naturales y culturales. Creo que los órganos consultivos han hecho una presentación bastante objetiva de las potencialidades que tiene el sitio desde ambos puntos de vista. Y a su vez también estamos de acuerdo en la necesidad de puntualizar algunos de esos elementos para poder fundamentar el valor universal excepcional del sitio, aun cuando se ha hablado de ser testimonios de elementos tan importantes como de periodos preclásicos, clásicos y posteriores, incluso coloniales en términos culturales, así como también valores naturales. En tal sentido, y teniendo en cuenta también esa capacidad que tiene el Estado parte para la realización del análisis y la evaluación de esas recomendaciones, Cuba ha presentado un proyecto de modificación al texto que se nos presentó en la finalidad de remitir al Estado parte el expediente y a su vez en este proyecto hemos tratado de sintetizar concretamente esos aspectos que han planteado los órganos consultivos. En primer lugar, demostrar en unos momentos los valores culturales, en otro los valores naturales y a continuación una serie de recomendaciones de las cuales acá han hablado los órganos consultivos. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias. Any more comments? No other delegation wants for the floor. So, if that being the case, we'll move on to the process of approving the decision. Mr. Rapporteur, have you received any amendments on the draft decision that was proposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we have received amendment from distinguished delegate of Cuba. As you can see it from the screen, please. Yes, this is a draft decision of 6 paragraphs. So the distinguished delegate of Cuba decided to leave paragraph 1 as it is. They modified paragraph number 2, which now starts refers the mixed nomination of Tehucuan Cuicatan Valley, originally habitat of Mesoamerica, Mexico, back to the state party in order to clarify in relation to the cultural criteria, a revised approach focusing on the chronological development of property, starting with prehistoric site, pre-classical villages, classical site, pro-classical kingdom, and early colonial settlement based on original agriculture, associated industries, techniques, and practice, ancestral religious expression as aspect that emphasize the cultural dimension of the nomination property. B also has been modified. The first part has been deleted. We start with regarding the natural criteria, clarify demonstration that all natural attributes contributing to the potential outstanding universal value are included within the serial components of boundaries of the nomination property within Tehucuan Cuicatlan Biosphere Reserve. Part C has been deleted completely. Paragraph number 3 also has been modified. We start with recommends the state party give additional consideration to the following. A, undertake, first part has been deleted, an augmented comparative analysis of site with evidence for irrigation within Mesoamerican to justify the complexity of the systems compared to other. B has been deleted. Now the number C become B, finalize the specific plan of the management and protection of the archaeological site within the nominated property and a link to the Tehucuan Cuicatlan Biosphere Reserve Management Program to cover the conservation aspects of archaeological site in the natural context. The D now becomes C, provide evidence of institutional coordination for sustainable funding and appropriately skilled staff of holistic, integrated management of natural cultural heritage values within the nominated property, and strengthen the overall human financial resources for management of cultural assets within the Tehucuan Cuicatlan Biosphere Reserve. D, develop a visitor management strategy for the nominated property that is based on holistic approach. Number 4 has been slightly modified, Mr. Chairman. I think you can see there. The last part, and to build sustainable development capacities of local community and other sectors to handle increased tourism interest in the nominated property. Paragraph 5, the slightly modification. At the end, we have to ensure economic needs and sustainable development aspirations of these communities are appropriately addressed. Paragraph number 6 has been deleted. This is what we have as a proposal, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rapporteur. I'll give the floor back to delegation for any general comments on this revised draft. And when we've done that, then we'll take it para by para. Finland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. These amendments, they are quite massive in our view, and we haven't seen them before. And it's so we would at least ask to hear the view of the advisory bodies, both ICOMOS and IUCN, and go very slowly through these amendments, and so we are understanding what we are doing here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Finland. Now, Turkey.
Turkey wishes to commend the State Party of Mexico for nominating Teotihuacan Cuautlan Valley as a mixed property in reference to the concept of the spirit of place by correlating the exceptional biological and geological diversity of the valley with the cultural diversity that was diachronically established on this basis by the ancestral populations of Mesoamerica. In the nomination dossier, this is done through a selection of sites with material evidence of early plant domestication and settlement, water management and religious activity, salt mining and pottery production, as well as through linguistic and documentary evidence. As it is, we believe that the property would contribute in a better understanding of the long evolutionary process of human adaptation in Mesoamerica, in line with the objectives of the recently closed HEADS programs. As underlined in the nomination dossier, this process has involved construction and reconstruction to tend to the needs of the continuity and change in the original communities, and its uniqueness is therefore better understood within the framework set by the NARA document. And we believe that this may apply to many assessments of cultural landscapes, relic or associative. We believe that the uniqueness of human progress in the nominated valley may be further illustrated by an expansion of the series of the 22 archaeological sites, but still in the format of a serial nomination and not as a cultural landscape as recommended in the advisory body report. Also, although the rationale of the advisory body proposal of narrowing the nominated property down to the water management infrastructure of the valley is very well understood, the Turkish delegation would support the nomination of the property as a series of mixed cultural and natural sites, as proposed by the State Party, in such a way as to encompass all the attributes that have been referred to. But to give the State Party more time to improve on the nomination criteria and comparative analysis, as well as on the management and protection issues highlighted in the advisory body report, Turkey would support the referral of the dossier back to the State Party. Thank you.
I thank Turkey, and I give the floor to Vietnam.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Suite à l'analyse des organisations consultatives et l'avis de notre ami de la Turquie, notre délégation du Vietnam soutient le nouveau projet de décision proposé par Cuba pour renvoyer le dossier de la vallée de Teotihuacan Cuautlan. Nous sommes persuadés que cette décision permettra au pays de revenir vite à notre comité avec un dossier consolidé pour l'inscription de ce bien vraiment exceptionnel en termes de biodiversité et aussi en termes de l'interaction entre la nature et l'homme dans la liste du patrimoine mondial. Je vous remercie.
Je remercie le Vietnam et je donne la parole à la Croatie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Well, Croatia fully agrees with the amendment made by the honorable representatives of Cuba. And it's easy to explain it, of course, because we have no problems with the natural value, and for the cultural one, we have to say that the revised nomination request is not a realistic one, of course, with the landscape requests and so on. The universal value of one of the oldest sites of the Mexican territory, hand in hand with the already recognized sites of the Olmec civilization, deserves to be inscribed. But of course, we agree with the referral amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Croatia, and I give the floor to Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have heard very carefully the presentation by ICOMOS and IUCN, and we understand that they have identified challenges through the perspective this nomination have been approached. And of course, we understand that mixed nominations are indeed challenging dossiers to put up, and they require strong commitment by the state parties, while continuing collaboration with advisory bodies. And we understand that the State Party of Mexico is really committed to pursue on this path with the mixed nomination. And we understand that what Finland has referred to as we should go slowly through the revised nomination. But we don't have doubts that the State Party could proceed with the efforts on the natural and the cultural parts of these mixed nominations and come back to this committee with a nomination responding to all the challenges that have been identified. So we think that a referral could serve the purpose of this work that the State Party still has ahead of it, together in collaboration with IUCN and ICOMOS. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Kuwait.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Although, as recommended by the advisory body to revise the nomination, much narrower, that relates to the early water management system, we think that the site conveys a great example of human interaction with the environment, such this arid zone, through the planned domestication, which demonstrate the innovation process of the settlers. We would like to support the amendment proposed by Cuba. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kuwait. Now I'll ask IUCN and ICOMOS to address the queries by the Finnish delegation. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The question from Finland was to have views on the recommended amendment, and I'll just pick out the parts of the paragraphs that relate to IUCN's evaluation. So the first of those is 2B. The amendments in 2B seem to essentially convey the same sense as we'd recommended, so we don't have a difficulty with that. 2C, it might be useful to discuss whether the whole of that paragraph, that subparagraph would be deleted, because there is part of it which relates to this question of the relationship of cultural and natural values, which could be retained if the sense is to not wish to ask for a revised nomination. And other than that, there's clearly some regret from IUCN that if the decision is taken to adopt a referral, it removes the potential to add the consideration of criterion 9 to the property. And as this area, as my presentation indicated, has got a very high global status in terms of its ecosystem values, that seems to be a pity, because there is a strong potential for criterion 9 to be met. Apart from that, I think the other amendments with very small drafting points seem to be consistent with the original decision, and in fact in one place I think improve slightly the original decision in point 5. So those would be the overall points. Clearly the issue behind this is the question of the relative merits of referral and deferral, and the importance, if a referral was taken, does that disadvantage Mexico? Because as we discussed in the orientation session, sometimes to convert from a deferral to a referral, prevents the possibility for the further mission and further advice on the ground, because referral gives no potential for that. And so I think it would be important for the committee, having heard ICOMOS, to reflect on whether it is a help for Mexico to have a referral, or whether it will in fact prevent issues that are still to be considered in a revised nomination being fully explored. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before going back to the floor, I will give the floor to ICOMOS.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the points that ICOMOS made in its evaluation was that this nomination was, in our view, a bit premature, in that the evidence put forward for the cultural sites was, in some areas, quite limited. And we certainly felt that if a nomination was to come back, having been revised, it would need to be based on a much wider set of data being supplied on what was in the valley and how the individual sites that were described related to each other and to the wider landscape. We, in suggesting the irrigation system, we were seeing it as a profound reflection of human interaction with its landscape in the way that people harnessed water to support agricultural development and thus settlements and so on and so forth. So we're not seeing this as a sort of technical challenge, but rather as a way of understanding the landscape through the irrigation, which seemed to us to have the best possible chance of success. But if these other dimensions which are mentioned in 2A can be much strengthened, perhaps there's a possibility to see this whole picture from the prehistoric down to the present day. But this would be quite a challenge because the information that's in the present dossier is not nearly full enough to present such a clear picture as would be needed. So I would reiterate what IUCN has said, that in one sense referral is a bit limiting. We feel that this dossier justifies much more work. And the Honourable Delegate for Portugal talked about the challenges of mixed nomination and the need for the State Party to work together with ICOMOS and IUCN. We, for one, would welcome the chance to collaborate with the State Party on this nomination, but we are a little constrained in terms of a referral. But nonetheless, we will certainly do our best if that is the decision. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, ICOMOS. Now I go back to delegation. Peru, tiene usted la palabra, señor embajador.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. El Perú respalda la enmienda presentada por Cuba y creemos que la remisión, si bien es cierto, puede excluir una nueva misión, no debe excluir una cooperación de otra naturaleza entre los órganos consultivos con el Gobierno de México, y esto creo que es la práctica y es el espíritu y la norma de la Convención. Yo sí quisiera señalar una cierta preocupación por el párrafo en el que se dan algunas orientaciones respecto del elemento cultural. En ese párrafo prácticamente se asume una periodización de la evolución de la cultura y la sociedad en el valle. Y desde el punto de vista de las ciencias sociales, de la arqueología, de la historia, no hay pues en ningún caso tipificación de periodos de evolución que sean unívocos. Siempre existen diversos modelos y categorías conceptuales que permitan afirmar denominaciones distintas a la evolución. Me parecería extraño que el comité asuma una periodización oficial, en este caso que va un poco contra la naturaleza misma de su filiación con una visión de las ciencias sociales y naturales que debe respetar. Pero este es un asunto que simplemente lo planteo como una preocupación para que el Estado aparte lo tome en cuenta, y más allá de eso, el Perú reitera firmemente su respaldo a la enmienda. Gracias, señor presidente.
A usted, señor embajador. Finland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Finland would like to ask a question from the state party, if Chair would allow for it. Our question would be that are Mexico confident that they don't want the opportunity to consider criteria 9, because if they really want referral, that will be impossible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now I turn, as you have suggested, to the Mexican delegation.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. A nombre de México queremos manifestar que sí estamos dispuestos a hacer un análisis y una revisión del criterio 9 y ver de qué forma podemos desarrollarlo para la nueva entrega del documento. Y estamos convencidos que el criterio 10 también podrá apoyarnos en ese sentido.
Muchas gracias, señora. If there are no more comments from delegations, I think that the time is now for us to take it paragraph by paragraph. If we are all agreed, I do not see an objection, so let's start. Would you like to take this pass? Okay, we go one by one without rereading them again. Okay, paragraph 1. I don't think it raises any problem. Approved. Paragraph 2. 2A. No comments. 2B. Sorry, I can't see the thing. 2C. 2C has been deleted. So no comments. 2A, B, and C are approved as altered. Paragraph 3. A. B, the new B, C, oh sorry, Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We just heard from the state party that they are willing to consider criteria 9, so we might need to revise that aspect to take into account the statement by the state party. Thank you.
Indeed, and I suppose Finland is along the same line. So we would have, so we can, I believe, leave the paragraph as it was. Consider including criterion 9 in the revised nomination in view of the global ecological significance of the region within which the nominated property is located. Sorry. Tanzania, I think you asked for the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The criteria is very strongly implicated in the analysis, so Tanzania also would like to strongly propose that the paragraph remains. Thank you.
Thank you. Good note taken. Cuba?
Señor presidente, en vista de que presentamos la modificación, queríamos esclarecer el por qué aparecía como tachado. No es que simplemente renunciar, sino que se había reestructurado la fundamentación del proyecto. Y en el 2A, en el punto 2B, se dice claramente de fundamentar los valores universales del sitio, es decir, que tiene cabida cualquier criterio a fundamentar. Por lo tanto, volver a hablar del 9 sería reiterativo. Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to flag out that as we presented in our orientation session, actually in the framework of referral, it is not possible to put forward a new criterion. It's like a poisoned apple for the state party. And I think that the question that Finland posed in this sense was just addressing this issue, because putting on a new criteria in the framework of an evaluation that is done just on a desk basis without site on the visit and within the framework of time limit of 2 months, this is technically not possible. So I just wanted to flag that out.
Thank you very much. Now I see Portugal. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think both clarifications from Cuba and the Centre were very useful. And I think the spirit of this criterion, even if I understand it will require another mission to be explored, it's already in the initially revised drafts presented by Cuba. And we have heard simultaneously the commitment of the state party, not only in pursuing with this dossier in order to strengthen further as a mixed nomination, also envisaging exploring criteria 9 through criteria 10. I think we could leave the draft decision as regarded to this criterion as it was initially drafted by Cuba, and we could erase this. I'm not seeing it anymore. This point B, so we will be consistent with what we are deciding here for a referral. Thank you.
Thank you. Peru.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Me pareció entender a la intervención del Estado aparte que no tendría inconveniente en seguir considerando la posibilidad de invocar el criterio 9. Por esa razón, yo le solicitaría a usted, señor presidente, si le podríamos dar la palabra al Estado aparte para que nos señale si tiene o no inconveniente en mantener el párrafo 3b.
Muchas gracias, señor embajador. Entonces, México.
Gracias, señor presidente. Sí, México nos comprometemos a hacer una revisión del criterio 9 y hacer el planteamiento debido con nuestras propias conclusiones.
Muchas gracias. Monsieur Balsamo, est-ce que vous voulez commenter
It's just also that the wording, a revised nomination is not normally requested in the framework of referral. So I wanted to flag that out.
We can be innovative now and then. So let me take with you from the beginning of paragraph 3, so that if it's clear for everyone. I had the same number of delegations wishing for the deletion of B and keeping B. So let's go 3A. Everyone agreed. 3B. Everyone can live with it. Good. 3C. 3D. 3E. So paragraph 3, A, B, C, D, E is approved. Paragraph 4, no objection, approved. Paragraph 5. No objection, approved. Paragraph 6, which has been deleted. No opposition to the deletion. Approved. So, okay, it's here. Decision 41(8b)(9) adopted as amended, and I thank you all very much.